Hello, everybody. Welcome to the WBC Talks. This is round 64.
Oh. Wow.
And we have referees, so we're okay now. They will protect us, Jill.
Oh, great. You can't say stay home anymore. You can say you can eat at a cafe. Just wear your mask. You could say wear your mask if you're not staying home.
Well, you know, in Mexico, I'm in Mexico City, as you know, we shouldn't be out yet. We're still in the, they call red light, so we are not allowed to go out.
Really? I thought that everything was opening in Mexico City as of today.
It is, but it shouldn't.
Got you.
Okay, let me first introduce Sochi Legarda. She's the director of the WBC University, and she always had a great reflection for you. Sochi, how are you?
I'm Victor. Thank you very much. Randy, again, I'm very happy to begin this week with better news. I was listening to the good news in New York, in LA, in Las Vegas. So that gives us hope that pretty soon we are going to be in that stage. But meanwhile, we need to keep training ourselves because in many countries, we still are in quarantine and we must still to be at home. And because of that, I am going to share a small reflection today. And today we are going to review why is mindfulness a necessary practice for this time. And we are going to begin with the following question. What role does mindfulness practice play today? First, let's make sure we all know what mindfulness means. Is the ability to pay attention to the present moment, because there is a tendency of the mind to pursue results, and in that action exists the state of disintegration. The body is in the present and in the now, but our mind is not. Mindfulness, it has been described as an awareness focus on the present moment without making any judgment, in which each thought, feeling, or sensation that arises in the attention field is recognized and is accepted because it's what's happening in that precise moment. And there are 7 relevant attitudes to practice mindfulness. First, we have to not judge. We have to be patient. We have to trust. We have not to try. We have to accept. And we have to give in the experience, okay? And also there are some, it's important to share with you some of the benefits of mindfulness. In the cognitive area, we experience increase of our attention. We have more clarity of our thoughts. Our creativity increases, and because of that, we make more powerful decisions. In the psychological area, our depression and anxiety decreases. We are less emotional reactive, okay? And our behavior is more regulated, okay? We have more of an compassion and altruistic behavior, okay? And if you are not a regular practice for mindfulness, then I want to share with you some recommendations. Try to focus always on the here and the now. If your mind lose focus, return to your attention to the present moment. You can do that by breathing. If you are in one place, your mind goes away, come back and breathe. Breathe carefully. Register how it enters your respiration, how it enters and how it leaves your body, okay? When you walk, try to perceive your steps, the weight of your body in each step. Focus your attention and listen to your inner silence. It's important to listen to yourself. And we have to be good to ourselves. Be kind, and let's make an effort to treat ourselves with kindness and compassion, because that attitude, positive and caring attitude to ourselves, it's going to help us to be calm, to be better, to be focused, and to have better decision. Try to eat good food, okay? Try to taste the food, to process the food properly, okay? And well, to do your work day and everything. Those are just a small recommendation. It's a technique that athletes use them a lot, but many people are using it. So we need to make pauses during the day. It's going to be, we are almost with the confinement finished, but we still have a new reality. We don't know what is going to happen. So we need to take it a step by a step, and we need to make our own process. And maybe the process of mindfulness, it's a good technique that can help us. With this, I finish the reflection for today, and I want to enjoy this panel very much with the referees. I'm very excited and to listen to all your experiences. Welcome, and thank you very much, Victor and Jill.
Thank you, Sochi. And now let me introduce Jill Diamond.
Hello, everybody.
How are you, Jill? How is New York?
New York is hot, very, very hot, opening a little bit. We're still fighting to have our gyms opened. But I want to thank you, Sochi, because I started breathing differently as you were talking, and I feel much more centered now. So thank you. New York is, we just have to remember to be careful that this is not over, but it's definitely a better New York than it was a month ago.
I'm glad. And now let me introduce Spark Lee.
Hey, how are you?
How you doing? You're in New York too.
Absolutely. I'm good. I'm good.
You're really close to Jill.
Yeah. We're in I believe we're in the same borough. Yes.
Is she dangerous, as everybody said?
Yeah, I don't mess with her. Yeah. Ain't no joke. I don't play with Jill.
Yeah, that's what I heard. It's good to have you here, Sparkle.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now let's go to California. Jack Reese.
Good morning. Good morning, Victor.
How
Good
are
morning,
you,
everyone. Good. Thank you for asking. Good.
A little chill in California. I see you with the jacket.
Yes, it's a little cold. We have a little bit of a weather front. I live out north of the city of Los Angeles in a suburb and close to the ocean. And it's cold this morning, so I got a sweatshirt on.
And how is this pandemic thing? Are you going out already? How is it working in California?
Yeah, it's getting better by the day. Our governor has put us into the third phase of reopening, where the gymnasiums are open, restaurants are open. He gave us an order to everyone has to wear a mask when in public places. But we are going to restaurants. There's social distancing in the restaurant. They're only working to half of their capacity. So there's tables, empty tables between you and the next group. But it's getting better all the time. And our numbers have been going up only because they've been testing more people, but the amount of people hospitalized hasn't been going up, which is a good thing. And we were very fortunate outside of the city of Los Angeles. Our numbers didn't reflect the rest of the country and some other places that had it worse than us. So we're doing pretty good, and knock on wood, I hope it stays that way.
Kenny Bales. Kenny, how are you?
Doing fine. Thanks for asking, Victor.
How is Vegas right now? How's the weather? How is the pandemic issue?
Well, it is starting to heat up quite a bit. We're in the triple digits now, 105, 107. But it has opened up, as you know, Top Rank. This is actually the third week, the third week of Top Rank doing ESPN fight cards on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I did work the first week, which was a Thursday on a fight card, and Last week I had off, and then now this week we got tomorrow and Thursday again, and I'll be working on Thursday. So yeah, we're blessed that we got boxing back, because we went for about 3 months with no shows at all because of the pandemic. So things are starting to get better around here.
Well, that's really, really good. I'm also a boxing commentator, and I commentate the first fight, Shakur Stevenson fight. And to be honest, I don't know about you, but I didn't feel I was missing the fans. I was missing the public. I mean, the screens in the back and the fights and the emotion of being there. I didn't feel an empty arena.
Yeah, it was interesting. Well, that was the first time for me to be in the ring doing any type of show, and there were no fans. But just like anything else, you adjust. It felt a little weird, but as referees, we have to do our job. So that was no problem. But like you said, it was real interesting how ESPN set the arena up. And actually it wasn't the fight wasn't in the Grand Garden. The fight was actually in a convention area, but they had it set up as though they were airing to a normal audience, but they had the big screens up, like you said, and but no fans. But it was all good. I mean, like I said, we adjust.
We continue, Kenny. I just want to let you. It's a little rainy, and I am 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 16 Celsius. So, is it good? It's good here in Mexico.
That's half the temperature.
The temperature, yeah.
It's half.
Half, exactly.
Like 120.
And the humidity here is not that bad, you all have been in an arena, especially in Vegas, because when you go to or the Garden, the Madison Square Garden, you buy a ticket and you go and watch at least 5 fights, 6 fights, 8 fights. So you're in the beginning, but in Vegas, it's different. People, the people used to be in the casinos, and then they go for the last 2 or 3 fights. So the first.
Victor, you keep freezing on us.
Fights, and usually there's no people. Is it too different now?
Well, it's pretty much the same. I mean, the last fight that I refereed was Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, and referees and officials have to report like around 1 o'clock, because there could be as many as 10 or 11 fights on the card. And when you get there that early, there's hardly no one in the stands, because everybody's kind of more or less waiting for the main event or the semi-main event. So yeah, people are out in the casinos and doing their various different things. And then when television starts, which usually at either 6 o'clock, then the fans start filtering in. And by 7 o'clock, like I said, the semi-main event or the semi-main event, it gets pretty filled up, and then by the time the main event kicks off, it's maxed out to capacity as far as the fans.
What do you think, Sparkle? Is it too different right now? I mean, without public, without fans, that in the beginning of those shows?
I mean, yeah, because, at the end of the day, the fighters, their families and stuff always want to be here to support them. But right now, they got to do what they have to do. And like I said, I just can't wait for New York. And I believe these fighters, they don't care if there's nobody there. They just want to fight. But of course, you want that support. That support, with us, we usually have fights and we'll have maybe Dominicans or somebody else, everybody, you know, everybody's teaming up and trying to root for each other. So it's great. I love to see everybody from the Bronx, you know, from Manhattan, and everybody, you know, fighting, and that person from the Bronx, from Manhattan. You want to see that, but if it's not going to happen, I think the fighters need to fight.
How about you, Jack? What do you think?
Well, you know, like you guys were talking about and Kenny had mentioned, you know, especially the major promoters have contracts with their fighters. And if they haven't given their fighter the mounted fights, all of a sudden towards between August and December, the cards get packed, and we have fight cards sometimes with 20 fights on one card. We just did one last year in the PBC. So those arenas are really empty for those first few fights. So, you know, I'm used to it. You hear a little echo once in a while when you hear yourself giving the fighters some instructions, but it's not a big deal. And I think now everybody's really tolerant because everyone misses boxing so much. What Kenny and they did in Vegas, and you guys did in Mexico City this week with Top Rank, everybody's just happy to have our sport back. And we're looking forward to it too. Like I was saying, we'll be back in July. Everything's approved here.
Anything you want to ask or add?
Are you speaking to me, Victor?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay.
A little bit. No, I think you made a good comparison in the sense that in most of the big fights, the first few fights are usually played to an empty house. We have to do what we have to do to keep people working and to bring boxing back. I think that we adjusted to it, but there's no doubt that it's more fun when the fans are involved. I'm very concerned about places like Madison Square Garden and Barclays, which are of enormous capacities and virtually nothing going on in there. How will they sustain themselves? I don't want to see those arenas disappear. So I hope they bring it back to New York sometime soon.
Okay, let's go to you. I just want to ask you, how did you get involved in boxing? And why boxing, Sparkle?
Oh, wow. I guess for me, it's probably a couple of reasons. I used to be a wrestling fan. I mean, I'm talking about Andre the Giant and Animal Steel. That's what I was into when I started getting into any kind of sport. But I went to the Garden and I had some bad seats. And for the first time, I got to see that it wasn't real. And it kind of hurt my soul really bad. So it was just so interesting. After that, I just happened to just one day, I wanted to really get to know about boxing. I started watching it. And I called up Gleason's gym and just see if they had like a little workout thing just so I can just keep myself fit. Just happened, they just started a female program at Gleason's. Here's the kicker. They only let us come on Wednesday. They didn't want the guys there at the same time because they wasn't really used to having like women in there. So we worked out, and then all of a sudden they started bringing the guys in. And from there, Bruce 𝗧𝗟𝗪𝗡 was now the president of the amateurs. And he just asked me, hey, Sparkle, why don't you get into officiating? I was like, no problem. But at the end of the day, I'll be honest with you, I thought it was just for wrestling. But as I worked out at Gleason's, when I used to hit on the bags, when I was younger, I actually was molested from a family. And I would see this person's face on that heavy bag every time. And I'm going to tell you, I really think that boxing really helped a lot with me as far as going through mentally, going through that lifetime. And as I'm working out, it just helped me so much to just get over a lot of stuff. So just as a lot of fighters who could have been in the street and they didn't have boxing, I think boxing and my faith in God has helped me. So that's how everything started. I never, ever thought about being a professional referee. Never. That was never. I enjoyed the amateurs. I enjoyed repping the kids and working out until somebody asked me to pursue that. So that was never my dream.
How about you, Jack?
You know, that's a really interesting question that you asked. In fact, Kenny Bayless and I were just speaking about this about a month ago, and I asked Kenny to make me a videotape. I said, Kenny, where did you get the passion for this sport from? And I was trying to kind of chronicleize everybody how they got their passion. Because there's like Sparkle was telling you, and I'm sure you two guys also, Jill and Victor, something happens in your life where something clicks, a light goes on, and you fall in love with this sport. And for me, it was, I grew up in a family that, you know, my father was big into boxing, and I'm going to try to reach something if I could, if you could hold 1 second. Sorry about that. So I didn't want to move out, but I want to show you guys something. So this is a picture of my dad on the beach in Coney Island in 1928.
Whoa.
See all the bathing suits that the women are wearing?
Yeah.
And my father's in a full pair of pants and a Italian t-shirt, what they call them, a wife beater. And he's yoked, you know, he's in some kind of boxing stance. And he was the one who brought my brother and I into, you know, the love of boxing. He used to encourage us to fight each other all the time. And he used to put socks, you know, a bunch of pair of socks on our hands. We would battle. And then, you know, it stayed.
4 ounces or 6 ounces, the socks?
I don't, well, it was a lot of pair. It was a lot of pair. And the fights would go until somebody cried or somebody bled. So that's how I got my start in it, my passion. And I was fortunate enough to be able to, you know, keep involved with it. And I fought when I was younger in New York, in Brooklyn, and stuff. And then I wanted to pursue the passion. And I called the Nevada State Athletic Commission and talked to Mark Ratner and gave him my resume over the phone. I said, I'd like to be an official. And I gave him my resume over the phone. And Mark says, you know, Jack, that sounds pretty good. He goes, but why don't you call the California Athletic Commission since you live in California? So I didn't know who to call. So he told me who to call, and, you know, and I got myself going in it.
How about you, Kenny?
Well, I used to watch Muhammad Ali on my mom's black and white television back when I was growing up. So that initially was what got me interested in the sport of boxing, and watching Ali with all his ranting and predicting and brash talking about how he's going to beat his opponents. But it wasn't until I moved to Las Vegas that I actually, within that year that I moved to Las Vegas, I saw Muhammad Ali at the convention center. And from that point on, I knew I wanted to get involved in the sport, but I knew nothing about the sport other than watching Ali on television. So I just started going to all the fights, and it didn't make no difference who the fighter was. I just went because I was as excited about seeing guys in the ring live and watching them perform. And so my first interest, I was kind of like Sparkle in a way, because I didn't, when I decided what I wanted to do, it was judging. So I would go to the pro fights and make me a bout sheet, and I would start scoring the fights. And then from that, someone that directed me to get into the amateurs. So I'm at the amateurs judging, and then I would go to the pro fights and I would judge. And then it was a judge by the name of Jerry Roth. I'm sure most of you recognize that name, said to me, because I would get my score and compare it with his score. And he said to me, he says, hey, Kenny, look, you're in fairly good shape. Why don't you try refereeing? And my first response was, oh, no, I don't want to get in there. I don't want to do that. And then I thought about it. I said to myself, well, why not give it a chance? So Richard Steele had just recently moved to Las Vegas. And I asked Richard, would he, show me the art of refereeing? And Richard took me to the gym and started training me, and the rest is history.
Wow.
You know, what a teacher, huh?
Yeah.
Amazing. Kenny, was it the same for your brother?
Well, actually, when I was judging first in the amateurs, my brother was judging in the amateurs. We both were judging at the same time. And then he moved back to California because, you know, originally we're from Northern California, up in the Berkeley, Oakland area. And when he moved back to the Bay Area, I told him, I says, hey, pursue the California Commission. You've been judging for years in the amateurs, which he did. And then he got on the California Commission and was there for years. And then when he decided, after he retired from teaching school, to move back to Vegas, then he, you know, was inspired to get on the Nevada Commission. And that was a blessing for him because he got appointed.
Great.
I was once in Canelo's training camp, and I stepped in front of him and I said, would you please explain me? And he was teaching me the movements, and I was afraid that he'd get too excited and throw a punch because it is intimidating. How it is to be in front of Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury in the middle of those two guys?
Well, I tell you, this year is my 29th year as a referee, and I've done many fights. I've been blessed to get some of the you know, big fights over the years, and for me, in the ring with Fury and Wilder was no different. The biggest difference refereeing those guys was the size of them. I was pushed to the limit in officiating those two guys because Fury weighed 271 at weigh-in, and they said the night of the fight he was over 280. Deontay Wilder was 231 at the weigh-in, and they said he was over 240 the night of the fight. And just the difference of having to separate guys that big as opposed to welterweights or middleweights or even light heavyweights, was the difference was night and day. But yeah, it was a workout. And because I go to the gym, and because I work out at the gym and take a lot of pride in my in what I do, it was able to carry me and get me through the fight. But it was very taxing fight, that particular fight.
I would like to go back to the basics. What is referee? Would you please explain to the people, Spark?
I'm sorry?
Would you please explain what is a referee? What does a referee?
Well, our job is to make sure that no one gets, that everyone is safe and that no one endures too much punishment. And the safety of the boxers, number one, safety of the boxers, not about what the fans want or what anybody. Our job is to make sure that, God willing, that when the fight is over, that each fighter can go home to their families. You know, that's like the main thing, safety. You know, if you come in there just to try to think about yourself, I'm a referee and want everybody to see you, it's not about you. It's all about that fighter. And as a referee, if you go in there and think of that, it's about them, and making sure that they're okay, that they get to go home, then you did your job. Not about anybody else.
You were gonna say something, Jill?
Well, it just was picking up on what you were talking to Kenny about. I just wondering, Sparkle, when you do a men's fight and they're over, you know, there's big guys, do you feel at all intimidated by the size of them?
I do a lot of praying. I would tell you that I did a I did a heavyweight fight, no joke, in Jersey. And it was the funny thing about it, when I saw the card and they had me, and I'm there with 3 other guys, and I saw me with these big guys, and they are, I'm telling you, they were like 208. Somebody was 220 pounds. And I'm like, okay. So when I go into the locker room and you go and talk to them, And one guy, I believe it was like 6'4". You could probably even look it up, like 6'4". And so I'm like up to their chest. And I go in the back and I, talk to them. This show's funny. So one guy says to me, okay, so how are you going to break us? I said, by any means necessary. That's all I can tell you, right? The other guy go in here, he listens to me. Yes, referee, no problem. We get in there, got these two guys. Like I said, they are tall. I'm only 5'2". And I was also told by one of my male referees, he said, Sparkle, don't worry about it. When you go, even when you sit up there and check their gloves, pull them a little bit. Let them know you're in charge. Like, no problem. So I'm like thinking, So anyway, the fight goes on, and the funniest thing, fight goes round one, boom, boom, boom. The guy who told me how I'm gonna knock him, how I'm gonna stop him, he goes down, right? And I'm saying in my head, okay, 1, 2, he gets up, wipe his gloves, boom, round the next one, he goes down again, boom. And I count 8, 9, 10. So I guess I had to worry about that. I just called it off. But yeah, you just do what you have to do.
Jack, what does it take to be a
Victor, I think if you come closer to the microphone when you're talking.
Yeah, what does it take to be a referee? What do you need to be a referee?
A lot of the things that my brothers and sisters referees here are talking about, and what Sochi was talking about before. But the basic thing I could tell you is being a boxing referee, a professional, is a part-time job with a full-time commitment. This is not something you could do without a lot of dedication and hard work. And I want to just add to something that Kenny was talking about, and Sparkle as well. We don't go from the amateur rank, or right in the beginning, we don't go from that stage to doing one of these big heavyweight fights that you were talking about with Kenny, the Wilder and Fury fight. We have a lot of fights in between, and we've all refereed quite a few heavyweights. And with all of our experience over the years, when they finally do assign us to fights of this magnitude, I don't know about anybody else, but when I get in that ring, like Kenny said, it's just another fight. And I'm so focused on doing my job. And like Sochi was saying, staying in the here and now, the noise of the crowd and everything else is blacked out. And I've always felt that if you do the work, you're dedicated and you do the work, you leave the rest to God, and you get in that ring and you just leave the rest to God, and it'll all work out. But if you don't do the work and you're not dedicated, whether you're a cut man, a commissioner, a doctor, a judge, referee, whatever you are in boxing, if you haven't put in the work, you will be exposed. You will be exposed. I don't know how to say it any different, because there are moments that come up where you have to use judgment. And if you haven't put in the time and the effort, you're going to be exposed.
Jack, I always think of referees as also being good referees, as also being athletes. What kind of physical preparation do you do before you get in the ring?
Well, it's not before I get in the ring only, it's all the time. So like Kenny was saying, I take pride in what I do as well, trying to take care of myself at this age, especially trying to stay as lean and have my movement as fluid as possible, because Father Time is undefeated, and you just get older and things don't work like they used to, like an old car, So I'm very fortunate. I live in this area with the COVID, the gyms were closed, but I live in an area where I live in a harbor, and there's 5 miles of paths that are along the water. And there's these benches and these stations that along the 5-mile path you can work out with. So I do a lot of walking and calisthenics. When I hit these benches, I'll do mountain climbers and jumping jacks and burpees and push-ups along the way on, say, a 2-mile walk, a mile out and a mile back. So it's beautiful. It gives you a chance to listen to music and think and stay in shape. And then like Kenny, I'm not a vegan like Kenny. That guy, I couldn't eat like Kenny, man. I don't know how he does it. I think, Sparkle, you are too, right? Aren't you a...
I was a vegan. I just like put a little chicken, a little back in my stuff now. But I'm with him. I like to ditto what he said. Right now, I'm telling you, I ain't trying to brag, but I think I'm gonna be in the best shape ever when I get out of this, because I work out almost every day. every day I'm exercising, I'm working out because I want to prepare. A lot of strength training, like he said, we have to start. You can't wait till they call you up and go, oh, okay, I got to fight next week. Let me start working out. I'm working out every day, and I know I'm gonna be in my best shape. I'm letting y'all know the chick gonna be looking good.
Well, I get that. And as far as answering your question about what we do to prepare for a fight, I'm sure Kenny and Sparkle have the same thing. I treat myself like a fighter for the fight. I make sure I eat well. I make sure I get an extreme amount of rest and relaxation. I try to I push everything out of the way in my life. So when I walk in that ring, I'm not physically or mentally exhausted, because we have people's lives in our hands and their careers, and no alcohol, like, days before the fight, not even a glass of wine. And when I show up to the arena, it's much like I used to do when I actually had fights, when I was fighting. I treat myself like a fighter.
Thank you, Jack.
The referee takes, when does the referee takes the command? When you're in the locker room, it's when you impose to them the day before the rules meeting. How does it work?
Well, in the state of Nevada, us referees are not involved with the rules meeting. Usually it's the executive director or the assistant executive director, but for referees, we're not there. The first time that we come in contact with the fighter is the night of the fight, when we go back to the dressing room to give last minute instructions. And believe it or not, that's where it starts. We actually take control when we go into their dressing rooms and deliver our instructions, make sure that both fighters in our instructions understand what we're going to do in what situation. And we always ask if they have any questions or any concerns. We go over that as well. And then after that, the next time we see them is in the ring. And when we're in the ring, again, we give the follow instructions in the ring, and then the show begins.
When you're assigned to fight, I know some people do and some people don't. Do you ever watch past fights to see what to look out for in the ring? Or do you just go in cold and non-judgmental?
Who do you want to answer? Because if you call on us, it'll be easier.
Victor, answer.
I go to a fight. No, but please, Sparkle.
No, I'll be on. I like to watch. I like to watch a fight prior. For me, you're still not going to make a judgment, but it just gives you, to me, a little idea on when you see them fight and how they are. Do they start off slow? Do they do this or whatever? Even though it's going to be different from every fight. Don't get me wrong, but I think it just gives you a little back thing, just to put in the back of your mind what to expect or what not. So, but some people don't do it, but I like to do it. It doesn't hurt.
How about you, Jack?
I'm like Sparkle. I depending upon the fight, if the fight prior to my fight that I'm going to do, if I think that there might, if a fighter has some issues or some problems, like with low blows or headbutts or anything like that, I will watch their last fight. For an example, Jack did the Tyson Wilder first fight. So I watched that fight a couple of times before I refereed the fight, and I watched it.
Kenny, did those pants make me look fat?
No, you were cool, my brother. But yeah, I watched Jack, and I watched the fight, and I watched it for the main reason, for if there's anything that I need to be cautious about or anything I might need to address, then that would give me that opportunity to do it, so that we would have a clean fight. And that's the key thing for us. We want the fighters to obey the rules. We want the fight to be clean, so that there's no issues or controversies that could stir up once the fight is over.
Here's Jack, so you can check by yourself.
Okay, well, it's funny. Most of you have actually been in the dressing room with me when I give pre-fight instructions. And to get to your other question, I definitely look at the fighters for, like Sparkle was saying, for tendencies that when we go into the dressing room before the fight, so I could very gently and professionally remind them that what they did in their past fights in certain situations will not be allowed tonight in that fight. And I had to do that in the Wilder Fury fight because both of them had some strange tendencies that they showed in past fights. Tyson Fury not straightening out his jab and throwing more of a backhand. Tyson Fury grabbing the ropes with his right hand, jumping out and and throwing a jab with his left and using the ropes to pull him away. And Wilder, when he starts throwing the bombs, sometimes he hits with the open part of the hand behind the head. And I was telling him, it's not going to be acceptable. You got to throw punches that are indicative of where the guy's body are, and just some things. And he used his left hand to push other opponents, measure them. And I just let them know that they're not going to do that. And the reason we do that, Kenny, Sparkle and I do that, is because, look, when the Los Angeles Rams play the New York Giants, they play them differently than they play the Cleveland Browns. And sports teams, when they study films on the pitchers and football teams study films on the other team, and we have to know what we're going to expect in the ring. It's going to make our job a lot easier. And that's what we do. And as far as taking control, we do something different in California. And I think you guys have all been there as well. The athletic commission here feels that since we are the referee is the guy or the gal that's going to have to deal with these two fighters, it would be better for him or her to actually give the rules meeting the day before and explain the rules and what those scenarios mean. So we actually get to establish our presence and control the day before. And as Sparkle and Kenny will tell you also, our reputation of being fair and honest, it really goes a long way. We've demonstrated that to the fighters throughout our careers. So when we get these fights, they know they're getting a fair shake, and that helps us establish and maintain the control in the ring as well.
Later, I'm going to ask you about the strangest thing that ever happened, so I'll give you some time to think. But is it a boxing fan could be a good referee?
What do you say?
No.
A boxing fan can be a good referee. I mean, when you love the sport and you follow the fighters and you want to watch Floyd Mayweather fighting and love him, that person could be a good referee.
Well,
go ahead, Kenny.
Usually a boxing fan, and I can't speak for all of them, but they're in a seat, they're relaxed. They may have had a couple of beers and who knows what else. And they're like the Monday night quarterback. I mean, they see things, and us referees see things differently than way the fans will see things. And to give you an example, me and my wife can be watching a boxing match on television, and I can see things that she doesn't have a clue in seeing, because our eyes are trained to look for things, and her eyes aren't trained to look for things that we see. So a boxing fan that's in a stand and had a couple of beers can't come close to doing what we do.
Victor, I have something then based on what you just asked them, because remember when the referees used to vote, they used to be judges. Do you think that was a good thing to remove that? Or do you wish that you were giving a score while you were doing the referee or being a referee?
I'd like to answer that who'd you ask?
Go check.
Everyone, it's a discussion.
Well, I got to tell you something, and I know Sparkle and Kenny, you're going to agree with me. It is 50 times harder being a referee in today's modern society than it was 30 years ago because of social media. In the old days, the only way you found out about what happened in a fight, if you weren't there or it wasn't televised, you read the paper. Now, the pressures that we face are so much greater because there's 15,000 people with a cell phone recording it. And before we step out of the ring, that fight is on social media and people have made judgments about what we did. And like Kenny said, 90% of the time, they don't even know what they're looking at because they haven't been trained and they don't understand the rules and the guidelines that we follow when we're in that ring. If they understood the rules and the guidelines, they'd really be more supportive of the decisions that we make. And I'll give you the perfect example. When Richard Steele stopped the Meldrick Taylor, Julio 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗞𝗦 fight, there was controversy both ways on what he did. But I'm going to tell you something that I support Richard Steele, what he did 100% for this one simple reason. Anytime a fighter is in any condition that he can no longer intelligently defend himself, it doesn't matter what time is on the clock. The fight's over. And Richard couldn't stall to let the fight go to the scorecard. He would have been cheating Julio 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗞𝗦 out of the win he deserved. Julio 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗞𝗦 put Meldrick Taylor in that condition. So you can't stall as a ref, but the general public doesn't understand those things, the pressures and the guidelines and rules that we're under.
I agree.
There was, as a boxing commentator, I tried to explain to the fans what kind of things to stop the fight, a punch before and after. And sometimes they agree or they disagree. But how hard sometimes is to be in a fight. To travel to a fight. I was in Kuala Lumpur with Kenny, Manny Pacquiao against 𝗥𝗢𝗨𝗡𝗗. You were in that fight. How easy is to be in the other side of the world being a referee?
Victor, you were breaking up as you were speaking, and I believe you mentioned about Manny Pacquiao and Luis Matthysse.
Yeah, I was there too. I was next to the ring with you.
Yes, that fight. As far as stopping it was pretty easy, and I say that because when I talk about the eye that we have as far as things that we look for, I could see that Matthysse was taking some undue punishment, and I could tell during the course of the rounds that it was just going to be a matter of time. He was taking too many shots. He wasn't defending himself like he should have. And I believe it was 2 knockdowns in that fight, but upon my stoppage, I knew that he had enough and was defeated. So those type of fights are somewhat easy. Now, to take another fight in reference to that fight, the Wilder Fury fight, I could tell that Wilder was taking quite a bit of punishment, and one of the things, especially in our training, which Jack does an excellent job in his referee trainings, is there are times when we have to sell our call, and what I mean by that, in that particular fight, as I saw the punishment that Wilder was taking, the round before his corner threw the towel in, I went over to his corner between rounds, and I said, "Look, you got to show me something, because you're starting to take a little too much for me," and that's selling the call. He knows the position that I'm in and what I'm going to do if you continue to get better like you are. the good thing for me is that the corner recognized that as well and threw the towel in before I stopped it.
And Kenny, I was talking about Manny Pacquiao's Matisse fight because I was there too. It's a totally different country, and people is waiting for a big fight. Is that a lot of pressure for you, or you just concentrate in the fight and it's the same thing?
I just concentrate on what I have to do. We have to have a lot of confidence as referees in what we do in the ring, and know that what we do in the ring is the right call. And my first big super fight was when Oscar De La Hoya fought Bernard Hopkins. And after that fight, I got a call from my mentor, Richard Steele. And Richard Steele said to me, "Don't change anything. You did an excellent job. You just keep refereeing fights the way you did, and you'll have a long-lasting career as a referee." And that's what I've tried to model myself behind.
Sometimes everybody's looking at the referee to see what's going to happen. Like I was in, it was 2016, December 2016. I flew from the WBC convention to Joe Smith, Bernard Hopkins fight. And Hopkins, I was calling that fight, and Hopkins almost fell all over me. I was maybe 3 feet away from that. How hard is that kind of fight, Jack?
Well, it's good that you brought that topic up. So listen, a regular season game in the National Football League or in a soccer league is different than the World Series or the Super Bowl. And the fight that you're talking about, or the fight Kenny just did, the rematch of Wilder and Fury and the De La Hoya Hopkins fight, that's the Super Bowl of our sport. And we've really got to give, it's their careers. They worked really hard to get there. They took a lot of punishment in the gym on their heads, getting punched and sparring to get to that point. And we want to take them out into deep waters and let them go as far as they possibly go without letting them drown, as my good friend Pat Russell says, because the fans paid for it, the promoters paid to put the damn thing on, and these guys have worked their whole life. This might be their only shot. But what the public, so we're going to take them out a little deeper. But what Kenny was describing before, and Sparkle was saying, we have their lives in our hands. So we're watching them closer than anybody else. We're not drinking a beer like Kenny was saying. We're the only, and we're not emotionally involved like their corners are involved. Sometimes in a bad way, they don't know how to stop the fights on their own. And we're their safety factor. And we got to give them every possible opportunity to complete the fight, on their feet. But when it comes to a point where they can't win mathematically, they're not fighting to win. They're just fighting to survive. And they really don't have a puncher's chance left. It's time to get the guy out of there or the gal out of there and end the fight. And there's a perfect example. You see Joe Smith knocked Hopkins out of the ring in that fight. And Bernard fell 4 feet onto his back and his head. It was interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, I remember that. It was scary to see Bernard Hopkins falling down the ring. But you took real control of that. How easy is to do that? To take everybody, don't touch him, start counting, because you know the rules.
Well, like we were all telling you, it comes from training. And part of the training that I do for myself is when I watch other fights on TV or I'm watching my colleagues live, if they have a scenario, I say to myself, what would I have done? What could I do different? Or did they do the exact perfect thing? And I remember watching, fights where people have gone out of the ring and thinking about it and visualizing in my head. So when that happened and he went out of the ring, I knew right away he gets a mandatory 18 count and he has 20 seconds to get back in the ring. It was from going over and over and over again in my head. And the seminars that all of three of us either put on or contribute to while we're there, we put these scenarios on. So when the situation comes up, we have that tool in our tool chest. We pull it right out. We know what to do.
We have a question from people watching, which is the hardest fight that you've ever had to do? Anyone can answer.
Yeah, 𝗧𝗟𝗡𝗗 against Anthony Durrell. That was the worst fight. Their styles were so bad for each other that, and Kenny, I'm sure Sparkle too had these kind of fights. It was so hard for the fans to watch. It was 1, 2, and hold. 1, hold. It was like a wrestling match for the whole fight, and it just was a difficult fight to officiate.
Just want to let you know that there's people watching in Brazil, Argentina, Thailand, England, Greece, Norway, Texas, Toronto, New York, Mexico, Mexico City, it's Germany. So everybody's watching. Thanks for being with us. Go ahead, Jill. Do you have a question? Or Sparkle, you were going to tell us your hardest fight?
My hardest fight? Wow. Just a few of them. But I think 𝗧𝗟𝗡𝗗, I don't remember who she fought that time, but she was a real tough. She reminded me of Hopkins. Just her way, the way she fought and stuff. I mean, you couldn't get her or anything, but that was a tough one. That was the first time I experienced that. So I would say her. But she's a good fighter.
Kenny.
When it comes to hard fights, to me, it hasn't happened a lot where I've had to disqualify a fighter, but being in a position where a guy keeps doing fouls like low blows or whatever the case may be, and then you have to disqualify him, it puts you in a mind thought position, because disqualifying a fighter is the last thing we want to do. But if we have to, then we pull the cord, then we'll pull the cord and disqualify him. I've had to disqualify a fighter before, probably once or twice in my whole career. I choose not to do it, but it happens. But the fight that I mentioned with Wilder and Fury, that fight, because of their size, it wasn't because of what they were doing, but because of their size was very demanding for me. And like I said, I'm just thankful that and blessed that my conditioning was able to get me through it.
Is it right that the best referee performance is when you don't remember the referee in that fight?
Yes. Yeah, you don't want to even be bothered. You love, and those are the fights you love. And you get two professional fighters in there and they just getting in. All you have to say, break, and they just break. I mean, it's beautiful. But, you know, sometimes you got to get in there. But if you don't see the referee, you know that was a good fight.
What is the, how can you get that feeling of a great performance? I mean, what does it mean for a referee, a great performance? When you say, oh, tonight I did good, I did great. What does it mean for you to do that? Is a good fight when you don't have to be there, or when you protect the fighter? What gives you that feeling?
Well, I'll say for me, I get a good feeling every time when the end of that last bell ring and everybody is okay and they get to go home. That to me was a good night. It doesn't matter how exciting the fight was for me. Long as at the end and everybody is good and that fight is going home to their family and I'm good. Then I know we did a great job.
And I ditto what Sparkle said. Yeah, the health and safety of the fighters, climbing through the ropes on their own power and being able to go back to their families is a good night.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that we in here, but people don't know it's no joke. This ain't no game. You know, this ain't no soccer game. This ain't no basketball being a referee. This is boxing. These are two people's lives. And I'm telling you, it's serious. So people say, oh, I want to do it. Are you serious? You got to be serious. This is no joke. You know, this is serious business, like you said. And like I said, I'm just grateful. Every time that bell in, man, and like, I'm praying. I'm praying when I get in there. I wish I can get on my knee like the rest of the fighters do. But I just look up to God and say, all right, you got this, you know?
So Kenny, you mentioned Richard Steele, Jack and Sparkle. Who were your idols, or who did you shadow when you started getting becoming a professional referee?
Well, I grew up in Coney Island in Brooklyn.
In
So-
Coney Island, come on, I'm not a referee.
So, you know, I was watching the New York boxing scene as a kid growing up. So, you know, obviously I saw Arthur McCanty Sr. and Joe Cortez, because he was originally out of New Jersey and stuff, and Larry Hazard as well. And then watching the fights from Vegas way back in the day, Davey Pearl, Richard Steele, Mills Lane, and guys like that. And then as I got older and started, you know, actually as an adult, Kenny Bayless and those guys. And then when I moved out to California, I was very fortunate to have a wealth of world-class referees that assisted me. Marty Dink and Pat Russell, Chuck Hassett, Lou Filippo, Lou Moret, Jim Jenkin, and all these guys would give me not very gentle instructions and reminders on what I was doing wrong in that ring. They were fair, but they were direct and harsh. And, you know, they would tell me, knock that crap off, kid, or don't do it that way. And I remember Chuck Hassett telling me to back up, use the whole ring and do other things. So I've always been fortunate enough to learn from pioneers that were way ahead of me, Kenny and guys like that. Benji Estevez, great, another fantastic referee I learned from.
What about you, Sparkle? Because there weren't any women before you doing professional.
I know. Well, I tell you, like I said, once I started getting into boxing and working out at Gleason's gym, I'm not a person that gambled, but I would get on a bus and go to Atlantic City all the time by myself and go and see fights. So like you said, you would have Mr. Hazard and all these other guys from New York and stuff that work in fights. And that's really where I started. And all the people they talk about, Richard Steele and Cortez, those are my peeps. You know, I was even blessed when Vegas, we actually went to Cortez's house and trained with him. So I remember the good times. So yeah, I did just what they saying. But yeah. But it's all good. There'll be a lot more women now coming up.
And you, Kenny, who else?
Well, like Jack had mentioned, you know, I used to watch Arthur McCanty. I used to watch Larry Hazard, and you know, because I was into the sport. Right. And then when I decided to become a referee, like I mentioned, Richard Steele was the guy I asked. But once I got in, I stole something from all referees because back then we had Richard Steele, and then Joe Cortez moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. So I had Joe Cortez, and then I had Mills Lane, and then I had Davey Pearl, and Jay Nady and Vic Draculich. I stole something from all of them and just used that to formulate me. And I still do it. Like I said, I mean, if I get the opportunity, I'll see Sparkle on a fight card, and I'll text her and I'll say, "Great job, Sparkle." Or if I see Jack, well, me and Jack were in communication quite a bit. But I know that I do a bit of stealing from other referees. And I know other referees do a little stealing just like I do, because that's what it's all about. We want to better ourselves every time we step into the ring. And if I can grab a little something here, grab a little something there to make me better, I'm going to do it.
And, you know, in the modern day, like Kenny's saying, we steal from each other. You know, back in the day, we didn't have any forms of communications. Kenny and I have been referenced since before cell phones. And now with social media, we contact each other. And what's nice is we're really not stealing, because we can say, I can call Kenny and say, "Kenny, I really like what you did in that thing. It's even goes one step further, Victor. I go, "Kenny, why did you do what you did? Can you explain it to me?" So it's not just that I'm copying him. He's teaching me his theory, and it makes us both better. because he has to verbalize his theory to me. I learned the theory, I pass it on to somebody else, and it's just so much better now.
I want to ask you for the funniest thing that have ever happened on the ring, but I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to think about that. I just want to ask, as Kenny said, when you're watching a fight on television, are you really watching the fight, or you're watching the referee's performance and learning? And what are you doing at that moment, Sparkle?
Both. I'm watching the fight and the ref. Because like you said, you know, you're learning all the time. So we just can't watch a fight and go, okay, I'm just watching the fight. Oh, you're looking at everything. Because like I said, if something happens in there, you don't want it to happen, but if it does, you want to see what he does, and then you'll see what I would have done and how we can all work together to make everything better. So we watch both. Yes.
You do the same, Kenny?
Yes, and I'll tell you this, Victor. As I was coming up, and I haven't changed from this, when I watch video of a fight, I put myself in the ring as if I'm refereeing it. So in my mind, I'm saying break, or should I be on the right side? Should I be on the left side? And I do that so that when I'm in the ring, it just becomes natural. And I'll share this with you. Jack gave me a compliment a few months ago. We did a fight and a seminar in China. And after I got out of the ring, Jack said to me, "Boy, Kenny, you move like a dancer in the ring. You just float around in there like it's amazing to see you work." And that meant a lot to me that he said that, because it's telling me that Jack is not only watching the fight, but he's watching me as well. Just like Sparkle mentioned, we see everything. That's what training the eyes is all about.
Jack?
Well, with me, like Kenny had mentioned before, I teach. I'm one of the 2 certified ABC referees that teach the classes for the ABC, and I have my own class called Soul Arbiter that I teach referees how to maybe raise their level of expertise. So it's weird how my brain has shifted. So whenever I watch a fight, I'm actually looking for situations that come up, and I'm always thinking, can I make a clip out of this to teach somebody? So I'm always following the referee, and if the guy or gal, the referee, did something good, I'm going to download the fight and clip it and keep it to show everybody what they did good. And then sometimes when it didn't turn out so well, or it was a very difficult decision and you needed your judgment, I'll clip it and I'll show it and say, hey guys, girls, what could we do in this scenario? So I'm always doing that type of thing. Now, so like with certain fights I see on TV, I watch them 2 or 3 times, because maybe the first 2 times I watched it, I was watching the ref. So I go back and just enjoy it as a fan the 3rd time. That's a panel we had. I think that was in Vegas, huh, Kenny?
Yes, I think it was.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we did a really interesting seminar in Reno. I think it was a year and a half, 2 years ago, where all the refs in Vegas and a few other refs, we all took a panel. We were showing fight scenarios and situations, and everybody got to speak upon what they thought should happen in this scenario. And we really shared a lot of experience with each other, and to the referees, aspiring referees, and the younger referees. I really enjoyed that Reno thing. I don't know about you, Ken.
Yeah, it was good.
I think it was the NABF convention,
Yes.
wasn't it?
Yes. Craig Hubble allowed us to indulge ourselves and put that together.
It's really a great panel. It was a great panel. Very entertaining. Jack, one of the most exciting fights I ever did was with you about, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, between Jessica Rakowski and Anna Marie Saccarato. I don't even know if you remember it.
In the 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗞𝗦 Palace up in by Fresno somewhere. Yeah.
when the bell, 2 seconds, they were even, and 2 seconds before the fight was over, just as the bell was about to ring, Jessica went down, and boy, did she try to get up, but you would not let her get up. You said, stay down there.
Yeah, she was out on, she was very much
Yep.
concussed.
Very much, and she had an ocular blowout, but I remember it was
Yeah.
literally 2 seconds, and she was like, I'm getting no. I mean, it was quite an incredible moment. The
And
whole
it's funny you say that because we're trained to recognize concussion. That's our job. Our job is to determine the level that they are concussed and determine if they're going to go on or not. And the difficulties that we face as a referee, I don't know if people understand this, but the world has changed and there's no more head-to-head contact in football. If a hockey player has his face against the glass trying to get the puck, other hockey players aren't allowed to hit him from behind anymore. The whole world's really aware of concussions. And if a player gets knocked and he has like an episode where it's called a syncopal episode where he gets knocked out or suddenly loses muscle control and hits the ground, he's concussed. He's suffered a concussion. In every other sport, they stop the clock, they call time, they bring out a stretcher, they put a seat collar on his neck, and they take him off to an ambulance. We get 8 to 15 seconds to determine if this fighter who just been concussed can get concussed again. So we have a huge responsibility that's on our shoulders. So we want to make sure that those people are okay, that they can intelligently defend themselves before we say box.
right.
It's something that was so interesting to see. I learned from Jack when he said, you got to sell it when you're trying to stop a fight. And I remember in South Africa, I guess I didn't sell it, and got these two fighters, and then probably like the third round or whatever, I stopped the fight, and everybody's like on me, like, oh, well, why'd you stop it? You know, thinking because I'm a female. They actually thought I was a guy before I got there. So I wound up stopping the fight because the guy was taking too many blows, and I guess I didn't sell it. But what was a blessing was the next morning while I was in a hotel, someone came to me and he said, you know what? You saved that fight. I said, why? He said, because when he went in the back, he fell out. And they had to rush him to the hospital. But thank God, you know, he's okay. So they said you saved him. So it's like, I guess I didn't sell it, but now I did. So like I said, we make decisions. People don't realize why we do it, but we do it for the fight.
How do you feel when you stop a fight and all of a sudden you hear the crowd booing behind?
Yeah, I'd like to share a quick story, Jill. I did a fight a few years ago, and it was a championship fight. The champion was from, I think he was from Cuba. No, it wasn't from Cuba. It'll come to me, I can't remember. But anyway, I stopped the fight in about the 8th or 9th round, and the fans started booing me to the point that where I climbed out of the ring, I didn't know which way to go because I was getting booed so bad. The doctor got in the ring, checked the fighter out, didn't see nothing. The fighter climbed out of the ring on his own power, went back to his dressing room. The doctor went back to the dressing room, checked him out again, and the doctor released him. The fighter came back out, sat and watched the rest of the fights on the card. They said the next day the fighter went with his team and went and was just doing a little see Las Vegas. On Monday morning, the executive director said that he started getting calls from the media, from different commissions on the fact that I had stopped the fight. And Monday morning, the team in Las Vegas found the fighter dead in the shower. And it was kind of like, all this negative attack the referee because he stopped the fight, and the fighter had passed. And, but it was like I was saying earlier, it was something that I saw that made me stop it. Like Jack said, we don't get a lot of time. I saw something, I stopped it. I got booed and and yelled at and everything else. And then the fighter passed a couple of days later. Now, our fight doctor that examined him, it broke her down because she could have easily had on his boxing passport, sent him to UMC to get a CAT scan. But he answered all the questions physically, mentally, he looked totally fine. So she released him, and then that happened. It was a tragic thing, but again, you just never know. You never know.
You never do. But I think now we have to go to Victor's question about what is the funniest thing that you've seen at a fight? That is unbelievable story. I wish the ending had been different.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is the funniest thing that ever happened to you, Sparkle?
Funniest thing? Wow. Not really funny. I mean, no, for me, I won't say nothing funny. I just thought something interesting when I had to do this fight in Argentina, and it started, they didn't have a covering. We were repping in a park, and it started pouring. We're not talking about a little bit of rain. We're talking about cats and dogs. We're talking about where I was like, I couldn't hardly see. But they was like, should we not do the fight? So the females, they in Argentina, they wanted to fight. They like, I said, y'all want to fight? They said, we want to fight. The judges, y'all want to judge? They judge. And we did 10 rounds in pouring. And I thought I was going to slip. All I kept was saying, God, do not let me fall. Even when I had to get the scorecards from the judges, they stuff was wet. It was like just tearing up. So that was like the funniest thing, but everything came out okay. And the fight went 10 rounds and it was awesome.
Was that the fight in Coney Island?
No, that was in Argentina.
Argentina. We had the same thing in Coney Island between Heather and Shelly Vincent. We did an outdoor fight. There was a creep, but the rain came down so hard, people started slipping and sliding. They were afraid the lights were going to pop out. They took a break and finished the fight.
They didn't even take a break. They said they want to do it. I mean, I took a chance. They said whatever the referee, but I said no. These ladies want to fight. Let them do it. As long as God don't let me fall, I'm good. And we did it.
Jack?
So just to add to what Kenny was saying, this is funny things that happened to me. One time in another country, two warriors were fighting and they had, from headbutts, they both had humongous cuts and they were bleeding real bad. And I ended up stopping it in the 11th to go to the scorecards. And the fans didn't like that I stopped it. And they started pelting the ring with things. And a loaded diaper flew right by my face. And then, so like a tough guy, I turned to look to see where it came from. And a Gatorade bottle hit me right in the head.
Oh my God.
But that was a funny thing for me. But the strangest thing I've ever seen in boxing, as far as a fight I was concerned with, is when Edwin Rodriguez was fighting Andre Ward. Those two guys hated each other. There was real hatred and tension. And Rodriguez came in purposefully 10 pounds overweight so he would have an advantage. And he gave up $200,000 of his purse, but he wanted the extra weight so he could rough up. I think he did, so he could rough up Ward a little bit. So they made a stipulation that it wouldn't be for a title. And then they were going to weigh him again the next day at 8 in the morning. And he had to lose a few pounds. He couldn't, just eat freely. He had to lose weight. So the next morning comes at 8 o'clock and somebody from Andre Ward's camp went into the room where the scale was. And I don't know if it was a friend, whatever, but they stole the scale and they ran out with the scale because they wanted this guy not to be able to weigh in early. They wanted to make him have to keep that weight off as close as they could to the fight. And there were security guards chasing this guy down the hallway in the hotel where he's running with a scale. It was hysterical.
How about you, Kenny?
Well, I don't know if this is the funniest, but for me, it was the most embarrassing. And it was in my early career, I had was refereeing a fight. It was outdoors near the strip at Caesar's Palace. And I guess about the 7th or 8th round, I stopped the fight and I went back to my neutral corner. And for some reason, television wanted me to stand in the opposite neutral corner. And why, I don't know. They just asked me to change my position. Where I knew to my left, the guy had won because I stopped the fight. Well, I go over to the opposite corner and I start talking to some people, and the word that we use a lot in Jack's training is don't get complacent. Well, the fight was over and I got complacent. And when they announced the winner, I walked over to my left and raised the loser's hand up. And he looked at me like, what are you doing? And then when I realized what I was doing, I went over to the winner and rose his hand up. Now, the other officials around ringside, they had a ball with that one. But for me, it was an embarrassing moment, but yeah. That's my funny moment.
We're human. We're human.
No, it was not that funny for you, but you can laugh now.
I can laugh now. Yep, I had to eat crow for a long time on that one.
I just want to thank you for all your time. I really enjoyed this talk, and I just want to ask each of you for the last comment or anything you want to add, starting with Sparkle.
I just thank you for having me, and good to see you guys, and everybody just stay safe and just try to love each other. And
thanks for being with us.
thank you.
Jack.
Well, I want to say, like, to Jill and Victor and Sochi, she's gone, I think, but I want to say thank you for having me. And of course, to President Mauricio for allowing us this honor to be, featured here and have a conversation for the great WBC Boxing University. It's a great honor, and I'm humbled, and thank you guys.
Thank you. Kenny.
And I ditto both the Sparkle and Jack. I want to thank you, Jill, for giving me the call and asking me to be a part of this call. And Victor, thank you for a great host that you are. And
yes.
And again, just everyone stay healthy and be safe, and we'll see you at the fights.
Thank you, Jill.
It's been a pleasure. I'm just disappointed Kenny didn't wear the suit he wore to the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame when he won. I was looking forward to that. But we've got three of the best here, and it's just such a privilege that you've come and given us your time and so authentically and so openly. Thank you so much. And thank you, Victor, for inviting me.
Thank you, Jill. I just want to say that I learn from you all the time. When I'm watching a fight just as a fan or calling a fight, I'm usually in the arena and I ask Jack, for example, if I can go into the dressing room when he's giving the pre-fight instructions, and I learn a lot from all of you. I understand what you do, and I really appreciate what you do, taking care of the fighters and make a fight safe as much as it could be. I know that you care about the fighters, and you're doing a great job. I just want to thank you for that. And I just want to thank you for your time and for being with us and letting the fighters be safe. Thank you very much for all your time and for this chat and the stories that I'm sure I'm gonna remind Kenny's story for a long time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very
See you,
much.
everybody.
Take care and see you in the arena next time.
All right. All right.
Bye.
And if you're in Mexico, stay home.
Of course.